recognize the space that I'm entering into with you. Like I'm profoundly humbled by it. So I'm gonna share a story of a time that kept me humble. I think humility is a blessing, and remaining humble is a good thing. So here we go. A couple years ago, I had an opportunity not of speaking in beautiful Florida or Atlanta that you just learned more about, but up in the upper East Coast. And I was speaking not to leaders, but to a group of third grade kids. I think our children need to know that their life matters. I think our kids need to know they have royal blood coursing through their veins. I think they need to know there's reason for hope and the reason for that hope in their lives. So I'm up just outside of Philadelphia, loving on these kids. Today, Jane gave me about 45 or so minutes with you. The Philadelphia school, they gave me 90 minutes. Okay, 90 minutes with third graders. Let's just say that is too much time with third graders. So I'm partying with third graders for 90 minutes. And at the end of it, I go to the back of the room and either fist bump, y'all can take a look at my hands, either fist bump or hug every child as they go back to class. Again, we've got to edify our young people. We got to remind them that there's hope and the reason for that hope. So I'm loving on these little kids. One of the little men, a little third grader, came over to me, gave me a fist bump, pulls back shocked, looks up at my right hand, and then up at my left, then looks right into my eyes and says, "Whoa, mister, what happened to your hands?" This is after I spoke for 90 minutes. Those of you who did not see the movie last night, you may not have a clue what happened to O'Leary's hands. I get it. But that little dude just had me speak with him for 90 minutes specifically about it. So he probably should have known. I have my slice of humble pie. What a gift to stay humble in the word. So I take my slice, I kneel down and I say, "Brother, how old are you?" And he said very proudly, "I'm 9. So I'm like, "Man, when I was your age, exactly. I got burned in a house fire on 100% of my body. I spent 5.5 months in the hospital. I lost my fingers. But I'm doing awesome today." And this little boy looks out the window, then he looks back at me and says, "Whoa, whoa, mister, we had a speaker earlier today. And when he was 9 years old, he was in a house fire too." And then he goes, "You two should meet." Well, Scott Hamilton and family gathered around the tables today after your pasta lunch. I have met that man. I shared with Mr. John O'Leary this morning at 4:30 a.m. I'm not that impressed by John. And my friends who really know me, not like as a speaker, no, like my friends who know me, they're not that impressed by me either. But we, not just my friends and I, we in this room, we are overwhelmingly impressed by how God works through the least among of us for his perfect purposes. Always. Not sometimes, now when it's sunny and you're in Florida, always, always. And my hope over our 41 minutes together will be to remind you how he's working in this season in your life. Whether you know it or not, whether you feel like it or not, he's working in your life right now. So buckle up. While Hamilton was, first of all, I don't know who the pianist was, but can we give one more ovation to whoever the pianist was who carried us through lunch? Like that was, you guys, like that was awesome. So I was ready to rock and roll before that. And then I was listening in the entire time and just praying over these words. And then that shows up and I'm like, whoa, so moved, so convicted. And then Scott shows up and he dropped the Bible verse for lunch. And I didn't know there was a Bible verse for lunch, but then he dropped it and then he shared it and then it moved me. So I completely shifted around my deck because I want to speak, Scott, about specifically what you just brought up. So this is the new and improved deck. I hope y'all like it. If you don't, blame Hamilton. It's his fault. If I mistyped any words, it's because I was cranking real quickly while you were going, Scott. But here it is, man. You just heard these words, but I want you to hear these words. When the storm has swept by, the wicked are gone, but the righteous stand firm. I love that word. They stand firm forever. When the storm has swept by, the wicked are gone, but the righteous will stand firm forever. So Scott was sharing that. I was thinking about someone, man, who is someone who I knew who just is a representative of someone who modeled that proverb. Because I think in life, I mean, we can learn certainly from scripture and we can learn from film and meetings, but undoubtedly we learn from those who guide us forward. We learn from those who disciple us and lead us and love us. So the very first story I wanted you all to hear today was not one I had in the original deck, but when Scott shared that, I just wanted to share this man's heart with you. I think he's an example of what it looks like to stand firm forever, even when you don't feel like it, even when the headlines are negative, even when the headwind is in your face, even when, for those of you who came from Atlanta, you got 3-hour lines to get on those airplanes, man. I was in one of them the other day. Even when. So here we go. I'm going to share the first story with you. This one begins with a heart bent toward gratitude. So for those of you who don't know like what gratitude can do for your heart, it makes you more optimistic, more kind, less self-centered. This is good stuff. It lowers your blood pressure, increases your energy, gives you up to 8 more years of living, better marriages, enduring relationships. Some of you need to write that bottom one down. It makes you more attractive. Okay, take notes, Hamilton. But it does more. Increase confidence, likelier promotion, enhance productivity. More than stuff, because family, stuff floats away in storms. Trophies rust. Money spends. Meetings eventually come to an end. More than stuff. I want us to stand firm, Scott, to stand firm. And when I think about standing firm and what it looks like, even in the midst of struggle, to stand firm, I think of people who stand firm in the midst of rising waters in joy. And a guy who raised me and loved me and taught me my faith, who I just said goodbye to for the final time just less than a year ago, pictured up there in the middle of the O. That's my guy. I hope everybody in this room has a guy, has a lady, has a leader, has someone who guides them forward in their faith and in their life. That's mine right there. That's my dad. He's my hero. He served our nation in the military, came back home, built a small business, built up a family, raised 6 kids, and then was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And man, it's hard to stand firm when you can't stand up, unless you have a foundation on which you lean. And my father's foundation was not on trophies. It was not on money. It was on Christ. That's where he stood firm. In the midst of rising waters and headwind and tailwind and everything else we deal with in meetings and events and leadership in life, my father stood firm. You saw this picture. I'm going to put it back up there. This picture was taken not far from where you're all gathered today. So we used to go on vacations down in the Panhandle, and my dad is standing firm in that picture for 2 reasons. Number one, because his faith is in Christ, and secondly, he's leaning his weight against me. My dad could no longer stand, so he lost the ability to stand up and walk around and drive his car. He lost the ability to work and go to meetings. He lost the ability to earn, which is how the world views our dignity. If you can't earn, what good are you? My dad lost the ability to speak and eventually swallow. But before we get to the final page in my dad's story, one ultimately each of us must reckon with, I want to ask you a question. What do you notice about my dad's face? Just yell it out. What do you see on his face? Oh, I heard it. Joy. In the midst of the storm, my father stood firm. In the midst of rising waters, in the midst of a progressively difficult disease that cast all kinds of struggles his way, my father stood firm. And you guys, I wasn't planning on sharing the story today. And then Hamilton went into his proverb, and so here it comes. So if I get a little emotional, that's why. That's my dad with my baby. That's my baby girl up there. I think she is standing firm in that chair, not because the Cardinals are playing, but because she's with an example of someone who stood firm, a man who she never once saw stand up, but she's witnessing as a child what it looks like to stand firm. It's so cool. That's my dad's girlfriend of 64 years. That's one of his rocks, man. That's my mom. That's one of my heroes. I could spend an hour talking about mom. This is my office. You see the work in front of my dad. You see the wheelchair behind my dad, but you see the goofy grin on his face. The man stood firm. This was our last speaking event together. Those ladies and gentlemen are lined up not to meet John O'Leary, the speaker. That would have bored them. They wanted to meet an actual hero. They wanted to meet a man who stood firm. From his wheelchair, he stood. Without the ability to speak, he spoke. They lined up for more than an hour just to meet this man. I asked my dad years ago, and some of you saw the film last night. You saw a whisper of the scene. There's two things about that scene that you may not know, though. Number one, the movie's pretty accurate. They even shot that movie where it actually happened. So the movie where John is talking to his dad on the screened-in porch, that's not in Hollywood. That's in St. Louis, Missouri. That's where my mom and dad live. That's where my father took his final breath. That's where I had lunch with my mom about 4 days ago on that screened-in porch. That's where they shot that scene. So it's a real scene from a real family's house in the Midwest. But there's more to the story than what they showed in the film. I asked my dad why he doesn't complain about how difficult his life is. That is true. And he gave me 3 answers. I'm going to put these up on the screen, and then in just a minute, you're going to turn to a neighbor and share with them today why you stand firm and why you're grateful. So I'm going to let this leader go first. And asking my dad to give me 3 things he's grateful for, the very first thing he said was, I'm glad it wasn't a more serious disease. He said it could have been one of the bad ones. And then he said, John, I used to be so busy, just racing after it in life. Now I've got nothing but time to reflect on who I am, on whose I am, and what matters most in my life. I'm grateful for this period to pause. And the third and the final thing my dad said, he said, I've always liked your mom. So I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm glad you like my mom. You married her 50 years ago at that point. I'm glad you like her. And he said, you're totally missing the point. Everyone else has cheapened the value of my life. My coworkers no longer saw value in the work I was able to do, so they showed me the exit. My friends who used to come around for a round of golf or a round of beer don't do either. Everyone else sees me as being less than. But your mother, my wife, she just keeps coming closer. He said, I haven't earned it, but I'm grateful. Sounds like grace to me, people. I haven't earned it, but I'm grateful. And so at this point, you guys, I'm an easy cry. Hamilton knows me well enough. I interviewed Scott a couple years ago on our podcast, and that dude got me to cry probably 4 different times in an hour conversation. I'm an easy cry. I don't care. I don't apologize for it. I lost that part of pride a long time ago. He wept. I don't think it's weakness. I'm reading right now Genesis with my kids, and I hadn't read it in a couple of years. I'm amazed how frequently Joseph wept. That dude cried all the time. I don't think it's weakness, though. I don't think it's weakness. So I'm weeping in front of my dad. I go over to him, put my arms around him like this, and right before I lock and load around his neck, he shared with me 3 words. I'm going to put them up on the screen. My dad whispered these words to me, but I want to make sure today, family, you hear them as a roar. Here's what Dad whispered to me. Sit back down, he whispered. And then he goes, I'm not finished. And then he goes, I got more. I got more. I got more. We live in a world that promotes this idea that it's never been worse than these days. It's never been darker. We've never seen such misery. We've never seen such animosity. We've never seen such poverty. We've never seen such, whatever the thing is they're saying we've never seen more of. Ask your great-grandparents when you see them again if that was true. Ask every previous generation who came before ours if that was true. Scott talked about the founding fathers. Ask them if that was true. I think every generation deals with hardship. I think it's important we read these words not from the perspective of a man with Parkinson's disease who is dying, but a man who instead is reminding us that in the midst of struggle and storm and rising water, even still, we stand firm. We stand firm. Sit back down. I'm not finished. I got more. I got more. So CMCA, I'm going to go through the rest of my father's list. I'm going to run. If you don't have tennis shoes on, if you got your flip-flops on, you may want to run upstairs real quick and get a pair of tennies because we're going to be running for a moment. Scott, get your skates, man. You'll need them. Here we go. I'm going to go through the rest of my dad's list because I want you to deepen your list. The time at home, he said, with his 6 babies. I'm one of those 6. And his 23 grandbabies. I got 4 of those. Then he talked about medical technology and the ladies and gentlemen who provided to him. I love this one. John, I'm going to look you in the eyes because I want to see all your faces. He said, John, when I was on top of the world, when life was good and easy, I don't think I clearly saw those who struggled under the weight of the world. And then he goes, I have now been stripped of all that pride, and I have joined them. And he said, but in doing so, the cataracts have been removed from my eyes and my heart. He said, I'm grateful for the profound gift of compassion. What a gift to struggle, church. I think some of us view that as a cross we wish we did not have to bear. Maybe it's one we should look up and say the words, thank you. What a gift to struggle. What a gift. My dad recognized the gift of the struggle, the gift of the storm. As he went on, I had to turn the page. He said, when I have to crawl, which he did for more than a decade, I'll be grateful for the days when I could walk, when I can't speak, which he was unable to do for more than 6 years. I'll be grateful for when I used to be able to talk. This next one's my favorite. When I can't drive, I'm grateful for the parking spot for those with the handicaps. He said, everywhere we go in St. Louis, John, we are like rock stars. Aren't we lucky? Aren't we lucky? Aren't we blessed to see and hear and learn and laugh and love and live and to do each of these things each and every day, family? And the final thing my father said, for being healed, even if not cured. He said, every day, John, I wake up before your mother. I roll over to the kitchen window in my wheelchair. I look out that window and I just wait. So I said, Dad, what do you wait for? And he said, I wait for the light to cut through the darkness. Church, he wasn't talking about the sunrise. That was kind of what he was waiting on. But he wasn't waiting just for sunrises. He's waiting again to be redeemed. He's waiting again to be restored. He's waiting again to be reminded that in the midst of the storm, that the God, the author of life, still works. The foundation is still firm and the best is yet to come. So, Scott Hamilton and family and friends and Jane, 12 years ago, I asked my dad for 3 things he's grateful for because of a progressive, miserable, debilitating disease. And that's what he gave me. When I held his hand as he took his final breath on May 30th, he died in the exact same way he lived, with this goofy grin on his face. And what triggered within me this story is when our friend, our MC, our brother Scott Hamilton, read this to us as we kicked off lunch. When the storm has swept by, the wicked are gone, but the righteous stand firm forever. That is such good news. So today I want you to ask my father's favorite question, which was, why me? And yet, church, And some of us need to be aware of this one. He never asked it as a victim. He never asked it like, where are you in the midst of this misery? You've left me again. No. Why me? Why do you trust me with this? Why are you so good to me? Why do you love us so much? Why do you promise us salvation? Why do you make all things new? Why me? That's a question worth asking and answering today. So in a moment, you're going to be standing firm as you turn to the nearest friend or foe. It may be someone you know well, it may be someone you've never met before. Either way, you're going to turn to them. You're going to share your heart in a moment. And I'd like you just to answer the question, why me? Again, not as a victim to the storm, but as someone who stands firm in the midst of it. So in 10 seconds, wipe out those tears. Make sure you don't have any noodles still in your mouth. Okay, that's going to be awkward and weird. If some of you ate too much and you fell asleep while O'Leary was speaking, wake that person up. It's going to be awkward for them. But everybody's going to turn into a friend or two. And I want you to begin the conversation with these words. In fact, we're going to practice once as a class. Just yell it after me. Hi.
Hi.
This is awkward for me too.
This is awkward for me too.
Look at me when I'm talking to you.
When I'm talking to you.
I love you.
I love you.
Nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do about it.
And today, I stand firm because.
I stand firm because.
That's it. So my friends, I ask you to turn away from the screen and PowerPoint and O'Leary, and I ask you to turn away from all the weight you dragged into the room, because we all dragged a few things in. Exhale that, turn to a brother or sister, share the love, share the reason why you stand firm, share why you're grateful today. Tell them you love them and there's nothing they can do about it. Toast life for a moment and then be quiet and listen as someone else toasts their life. So we're going to do this for 90 seconds. Everybody huddle up, please, in 2s and 3s. Let's roll. Come on.
Hi.
All right, here we go. What an awesome way to kick off a lunch. Not just with fellowship and pasta, but toasting life. All of it, even the hardship. That is so worth standing firm in. So Scott, thank you for changing my first step into our afternoon. None of that was planned. Thank God. That's a pretty cool way to live life. I think if you're looking for a model of this, look for the example of Jesus. So much of the best of his work seems to be done in the interruptions, So let's not overschedule ourselves to such a degree or overscript ourselves to such a degree that we can't be open to interruptions. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program, family. Here we go. We started today in gratitude. We stand firm in that truth. But I want to take at least one more step, and if we have time, maybe 2 more steps. I want us to live with our souls on fire with love. By a show of hands, and I will not call on you, so don't feel guilty if you did not raise your hand right now. How many of you last night saw the film Soul on Fire? Lots of people. Okay, that's so cool. I'm grateful. At the end of this story, I'll take any questions you want to ask around that film or that story or my dad or discipleship or anything, meetings and events, like whatever you want to talk about, I'll let you all lead. But this story you're about to hear is the story of love that came out of that story. And sometimes when we're dealing with fire or floods or burns or diagnosis or headwind or delays at the airport, it's difficult to see God's mighty hand in the midst of it. And as you begin hearing the story you're about to, it's going to be very easy to not see God's perfect hand all over this. And yet as you get to the end of it, it's impossible not to see the plan. It's quite literally, it's impossible not to see his fingerprints all over this little boy's life. So we're going to go on a little ride. You had your hands up a moment ago. It's almost like a roller coaster we're about to go on. We're going to go way on down, and it's going to hurt a little bit. Friday comes, my friends, but Sunday follows. We are Easter people. We are Easter people. I think too often the Christian church lives on Friday. God, it's just tough out there. In fact, it's never been worse than these days. We're Easter people. We go through Fridays. We understand the power of the cross, but we also know that salvation's coming. But the stone gets rolled back. So we're going to go through both sides of that story real quickly here. So here's the story in a nutshell. A little boy named John O'Leary, like it showed in the film, saw boys in his neighborhood playing with fire and gasoline. And what these little fellows would do is they would sprinkle gasoline, throw a match on top, and I just figured if they could do it, so could I. It just boyhood modeling. We all wanted to be like kids in our class. Probably some of us still want to be like kids in our class. We look up to people. That's not a bad thing. We just want to make sure we're looking up to the right people. That weekend, I'm following the wrong example. My mom and dad are gone. My mother's out of the house with a couple of my sisters. My dad is at work, preparing for the following week. I'm at home. In the movie, I think it's like late afternoon. And in reality, it was 7:25 in the morning. I walk into my mom and dad's garage. I bend over a 5-gallon can of gasoline. I try to pour a little bit on top, but the can was 5 gallons. That's 42 pounds in a metal container. So I set the little flame on the concrete floor, bear hugged this thing, and then very carefully waited for liquid. But before the liquid came out, what shows up first? Before the liquid comes?
Gas.
Yeah, gas, vapor, fumes. In other words, church, the invisible stuff. The world is so focused, I think, on liquid. We spend a lot of time talking about lines and tweets and fires. We don't spend a lot of time talking about the vapors, about the fumes, about spirit, about how God works truly through all things. How cool to come together where we celebrate fumes, where we celebrate vapor, where we celebrate the power of the things yet unseen. It's not a bad thing. I think it's a powerful thing once we harness it for good. But that day, those fumes came out of this can you're about to see. These are the real pictures. It created this massive explosion. It picked up some 9-year-old boy after ripping metal in two, and it launched me 20 feet against the far side of the garage. When we were young, we were taught to stop and drop and roll. And yet, family, CMCA, when you're the one that finds yourself on fire, when you're the one who finds yourself burning, you run. In the movie, because they knew that they were going to shoot this movie to make it appropriate for like second grade kids or grandparents and everybody in between. But in the movie, they have a little picture of like John with little flames leaping off of his body. In real life, the little boy had been engulfed in gasoline and set ablaze, and the flames were leaping 3 feet off of my body in all directions. It wasn't just, oh, that's bad. I bet that hurt his arm a tiny bit. This child's ablaze. I'm ablaze. The garage is ablaze. I'm scared. I ran on fire back into the house. I stood on top of a rug. I remember standing there screaming, praying for a hero. God, I'll take anybody. What I knew even as a child is I can't do this by myself. And I remember seeing my brother Jim coming toward me. And as my 7-year-old brother is racing toward me, I remember thinking, God, anybody else, not him. Not him. And yet, church, older brothers and sisters, younger siblings in the house, this was his day to change and to shine. My brother Jim faced that fear. He faced the fire. He picked up a rug. He beat down the flames. He burned himself in the process. That's important to recognize, because when he first swung down into the flames, what he did naturally is he dropped the rug. In church, that's what you will do when it gets hot. If your life, if your conference and events, if it's all about your community, your city, your work, your paycheck, your ego, that's what you do. But what if it's not? What if ultimately nothing you do is about you? Nothing. What Jim did at first was normal and natural and appropriate. My brother Jim, 17 years of age, dropped the rock. Self-preservation. What he does next is divine, spirit-led. He comes back into the fight, picks up the rug a second time, swings down into the flames, burns himself, carries me outside, jumps on top of me, rolls me around in the wet grass, goes back into the house. The house is burning. Calls 911, chases out the girls, chases out the dog. 1987, the lifesaver of the year for the state of Missouri was not a military official or a police officer. The lifesaver of the year was a 17-year-old boy who changed. This is what happens when we become convicted in the Spirit. It's not about you anymore. You saw it in the apostles. You want to look for a group of underachievers, look no farther than Jesus' 12 until they're touched by the Spirit. And then they do things we can't fathom. My brother Jim was touched. He changed. I caught. His love and his life, his leadership gave this little boy a chance. One moment, I'm this happy and healthy. I'm going to zoom in for the folks in the far back. It's okay to nod your head. Extremely good looking. It just is what it is. Life is good. Tree is up. Baby Jesus is coming. Life is awesome, man. 5 siblings. Never been sick in your entire life. Never even thought of going to a hospital. Why would you? Go to church on Sundays and have pancakes afterwards. And then it changed. And what I'll say about the church is it's very easy to worship when the sun is shining. I mean, it's hard not to, in fact. It's pretty outside. Look at that beach. Breeze. Woo! God is good. What about when it rains? What about when it storms? Are you still able to stand firm? The next picture is going to be hard to look at. I'm going to say that again. I know we're coming out of pasta comas and everything else from meetings and events. So if you want to just shut your eyes for a moment, feel free. But today I am going to show you one hard picture. It's going to be on the screen in 5 seconds. So if you want to shut your eyes, feel free. I found myself on my back with burns on 100% of my body. 87% were 3rd degree. I'm laying in some hospital bed. I'm dying. A person knows when they're dying. I'm going to go back to the picture one more time just so I can go past it. A person knows when they're dying. And I remember laying in a hospital bed, and the only thought I had, and it's relayed a little bit in the film, but on the chance you missed it, the only thought I had was, oh my gosh, my dad is what? Dad's going to kill you, boy. Daddy's going to kill you, boy. I knew my father's wrath. I'd felt it before for far less things than blowing up his house. This time I know I earned it. Have you ever done something to someone else and you knew you let them down? You knew you didn't hold up your end of the bargain. You knew that whatever was going to blow next was in fact because of you, because of something you did or something you chose not to, because of words you spoke or words you chose not to. Both are sins, omission and commission. I've made a lot of sins in my life, but one of them was blowing up my mom and dad's house. I knew the wrath of my father was coming. I felt like the wayward son, man. I got a picture of the prodigal son over here to my left. I know that pain. Some of you know the pain well too. Thank God for a father who comes running out toward us. Some of us have to read scripture to understand what that feels like. I felt it in real life. When I interviewed Scott Hamilton on our podcast, I'll never forget, he talked about being adopted. And I said, was that hard for you to growing up knowing that? And he said, not at all. It wasn't hard for me. My parents gave me life, but my mom and dad, he used this word, they chose me. They chose me. We have a father who chooses us. That's so awesome. We got to come home. But he chooses us. And that day, as I was laying in the emergency room, my dad chose me. And if you saw the movie last night, it is a true story. He came in, he looked me in the eyes and he said, John, you look at me when I'm talking to you. And then he goes, I love you. And there is nothing you can do about it. Nothing. That is such good news. And it's hard to receive that. So I remember as a child thinking, oh my gosh, nobody told my dad what happened. The old man doesn't know. Maybe I can get away with it. What do y'all think? Does my dad know? Yeah, he knows, dude. And he's mad until he pulls back the curtain and he sees what matters. In the race through life, church, it's very easy to forget why we run in the first place. I think it's one of the reasons why God reminds us of the power of Sabbath. That day of slowing down is to remind us why we run in any way. If you're not valuing yours, you're not truly valuing fully your life, I think. My dad came face to face with why he ran, and it changed him and then me. His love did not make the next 5 months easy. It did not make waking up with our fingers, as you saw in the film, easy. But in time, it made that journey possible. That's the gift of grace, the beauty of mercy, the power of love. So I'm going to put a question in front of you right now, family. Here we go. There's cute mom and dad back in the 80s. I want you to think about one person who inspires you to become the best version of yourself, just one. And do they know? Have you told them lately? She's my spouse. Of course she knows. John, I raised them. Of course I tell them. I work with them every day. They know I respect them. I'm grateful for their efforts. Yeah, we go to AA together. I see them on Tuesdays. It's all good. No. Have you told them? Do they know your heart for them? Do they know you love them and there's nothing they can do about it? It's not performative. It's grace. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to do two things. Well, number one is O'Leary is going to do a far worse job playing the piano than the real pianist you had over lunch. Trust me. But I'm going to play the piano for you in a moment. And while I prepare to play the piano, what I want you all to do is to grab your phone. In fact, I'm going to have you do it right now while I can see you. How many of you own a phone? Almost half. Awesome. Well, the other half, there is going to be a breakout tomorrow on new technologies. One of them is called cell phones. You should consider that breakout. If you have your phone, grab it. And my ask right now is to reach deep into your Rolodex and identify a friend, a family member, a neighbor, someone you work with, you worship with, you work out with, you do life with, someone who saw beauty in you before you saw it in yourself. And just tell them you love them and tell them why. And I'm going to give you 90 seconds to do exactly this. While you're typing away on your phones, I'm going to put a video of a piano being played. This is the very first time I ever played the piano live. They portrayed it in the film. I played in front of 28,000 people, a kid with no fingers. And I played my mom and dad's favorite song. So I'm going to play for you today my favorite song, their favorite song. It's called Amazing Grace. I hope you enjoy it.
And it always starts slow. never started taking notes, take them now, baby.
That was a group we did in Las Vegas back in 2017, and we always have pre-calls with our clients. And question 13 is, what do you not want John to talk about? And there are almost always two things on that list. Number one, politics. And number two, faith. Don't talk about faith. Don't talk about faith, please. And so I can't talk about my life without talking about faith to some extent, period. But on that day in particular, I think the Spirit was working in the lives of the meeting planners who had written down previously, don't talk about faith. One of them had read an article that said, John plays the piano, which is true, but I only played for my mother's birthday. I only played for her. I never played outside the house, ever, not once. And she said, John, will you play for my family? Her family was 28,000 at the MGM. And my heart has always been toward, like, I don't want to. That's my heart. But then, as my dad taught me, the goal then also ultimately is to stand firm, even when you don't want to. So I said, yes, ma'am, what song would you like to hear? And she said, John, what was your mom and dad's favorite? So I said, well, they love Amazing Grace. So she goes, I'll play that for my family. The very same person who said don't is now saying do. That's meaningful for a million reasons, but one of them is afterwards there was a woman from the Jewish faith background and another woman who fell away from the church years earlier. They came up to me with a copy of the book in the hand, the same book that you have in your hand right now, and they said, John, that was awesome. Have you ever thought about turning this book into a film? And I said, no, I've never thought about that. That's wild. So these two folks said, could we try? And even though my heart is like, no, that's a waste of time, my dad taught me years ago, man, you stand firm. And that, yes. So I gave those two ladies the opportunity of running and had no idea where they would ultimately end up. But where they ended up is exactly what you saw last night. And that's so often how God works. When we don't want to, he still uses us. When they say no, he still does. You can't silence truth. You can't. So it's pretty cool that that song that wrapped our film last night, if you saw it, and that wrapped this little session right here before we move into Q&A, wasn't planned, except by God, which is a pretty cool way to rest assured in your life. Try to stop overthinking it. It's going to work. He's got a plan for your life. So family, one more text to hit send on. By the way, if you hit send, you probably got the talk bubbles coming back right now. Oh, here it comes. What's wrong? What you do last night? You get home on that next flight. Never let it come as a surprise when we tell people that we love them. Let it be almost something you lead with, second nature. But one more text before I take any questions you may have. So family, here we go. This message goes to your newest friend. His name is John. I spoke with Scott a couple of years ago. I spoke with Jane a couple of weeks ago. I've been speaking with Jake, who's working the AV table throughout the entire day. But now you have the number 2. And my ask is text me your email address. So my number is going to be up on the screen, but this is how you and I do life together beyond Florida. So 314-380-5690. Just text me your email address or the email address of someone you don't care for. I don't care. I'll take them too. Hit send and be done. So final time, church, CMCA. 314-380-5690. Then your email address, and then hit send and be done. And you'll get an immediate response that shows that it went through. The goal of this is not just to send you love on Monday mornings. I wrote the one that's coming up. The next one coming up, by the way, is about how would you spend your last day on earth? And as a child, I had a lot of time to think about that in the hospital because every day we kind of thought it was the last. And for me, every day was about me, getting gifts and getting milkshakes and being loved on. So how did Jesus spend his final day? Just like washing feet and teaching and serving. So we send out messages like this on Mondays. So I love sending those messages out. But more than that, I'm here to serve. So if you bump into someone who just lost their home in a fire, or someone who's got an unwanted diagnosis, or someone who's struggling in some aspect of their life, well, I'm in. You got my number. You'll get my emails. Hit reply. We're church. I almost think we spend too much time in meetings and events. And I'm a conference speaker. Let's pick up our mats and go to work. Let's love people where they are. Let's meet them at the well. So that's what we try to do. We use meetings and events around the country and around the world to walk with individuals. We use the megaphones of movies and books to love people where they are. So anyway, Scott, what we thought we would do, Jane and I had this idea on the call, is as we wrap up this meeting, we got 6 more minutes on the clock to allow the room to speak about anything they want to talk about. So now with the mic less in my hands and more on yours, what questions might you have for your newest friend, John O'Leary? So whether it comes from Hamilton or Jane or someone else in the room, we'd love to hear from you. What questions do you have as we get ready to wrap up this session?
What do you do when you have to speak and you're just feeling discouraged, you're feeling down about yourself? I'm sure you never feel that, but just hypothetically, if you were ever struggling, but you have to get up to speak in front of a group, what's your go-to? How do you kind of enter into that space to help you?
The first thing I do in the morning is I look in the mirror. And what you're looking at here is about the best of O'Leary. And I don't mean that as a compliment. Like already it's pretty broken. And then go ahead and take a look. And if we had more time, I'd lift this shirt up and I'd show you the scars on my chest. And it goes downhill from there. And when I'm looking in the mirror, not only am I seeing brokenness, I'm feeling it. I walk with a limp. My arms are at 90 degrees just about permanently. My body aches all the time. That's true for me. Additionally, I'm an introvert, which means I don't want to speak. I don't want to be on this call. Yesterday, I was in Chattanooga. I didn't want to be there. The day before, I was in San Diego. I don't want to be there. The more I can turn my life over to him, the more sorrow is replaced almost immediately with hope. The more I don't feel like it is replaced with it doesn't matter. It's not your will, it's his that it ultimately gets done. So the more I turn my life over to the reason for my life, the more liberated I am to live it well. I don't know if this is giving you an answer, but this is really, truly my process. Yesterday, I spoke 4 different times in Chattanooga to a custodial group, to a hospital group, to a leadership group at a luncheon, and then into a very entitled school. $41,000 is what these kids pay every year, 6th to 12th grade. Every group was radically different. And each time as I was getting ready to take the stage, I'm like, I'm not ready for this. So then I always say, God, your will, not mine. And all my anxiety, all my desperation, all my not wanting to goes away. So that's, for me, that's really important. The way then I armor up is I step into the day in the Word. If I'm tuning into Fox or MSNBC or CNN to start my day, I want to make sure I offend everybody equally in this room. I'm not your friend, okay? I'm not for you. And what you ought to know about the media, neither are they. Neither are they. They don't give a about your life, not even a little bit. They're there to sell you shampoo. That is what they want from you. That is what they want from you. So rather than looking to them for truth, I look to the source of truth. And that fills me up for the day. Sometimes that day means TSA long lines. Sometimes it means I brisk right on through TSA. But it doesn't matter what happens in my day. It doesn't matter. The author of life is already working in it. So I try to armor up on the front side. I try to love people where they are. One thing I've noticed, and then I'll be quiet, the more I think about tomorrow, the more miserable I am today. The more I can live boldly in this moment with you and my friends. And then eventually, God willing, I go home today and I get to love my little ones. The more all my struggles of tomorrow fade. So much of anxiety is tethered to the next moment rather than this one. So the final thing I'll say to you, what I do before I take a stage frightened and unsure of myself and lacking confidence and wanting to be any place other than that stage, is come back into the moment. Be where your feet are, and Christ will meet you there.
John, I wasn't familiar with your story until last night, and just want you to know how moved and touched I was by your story and by the encouragement that you share with others now through your story. One of the things that we saw in the movie last night was your interactions with Jack Buck. And I'm wondering, what was it that what's the greatest lesson that Jack Buck may have taught you?
Jack Buck, the great radio announcer for the St. Louis Cardinals. This was going to be the story I shared until doggone Scott Hamilton had to kick us off with a Bible verse and ruined my entire program for you all today. So if you hated today's luncheon speaker, blame Hamilton at break. Okay, like you would have loved me had it been my will, but unfortunately it was Scott's will that was done. Because I was going to tell you this great story about a radio announcer named Jack Buck and what he did and the love he showed and the lessons he taught. So what was the most important one? First of all, you should know that this guy wasn't perfect. I think the mistake we make when we see heroes like Superman wearing capes is to think that they were that person all the time. Speaking a little bit outside of school here, Jack was probably addicted to various things. He saw things in the war that I think changed him, some of it for good, but undoubtedly when we get burned in life, we also get changed in ways that haunt us for the rest of our days. So Jack battled some of those demons for a while, and I think part of what allowed him to battle through it was performative behavior for others. He was always serving. But if you're always in the community serving, it also means you're not at home serving. So I'm going to just kind of couch that one, but be aware of that if you are one place, it also means you're not somewhere else. So Jack was on the road with a team, or he was in prisons, hospitals, or retirement homes serving, which is a beautiful example. I think the most important example on the positive side, he taught me, it's twofold. Number one is what happens when you show up for those who don't deserve it. It's relevant to speak to you on this. When he showed up in my hospital room after I got burned, he wasn't showing up in the hospital room of a guy who eventually would be a 2-time #1 national bestseller, a future film star, a future speaker. He was showing up in the room of a dying child. That's it. He was showing up in the life of the most broken among us with no intent other than to love that one where they were right then and there. Like, the lady at the well that Jesus meets where she is, who knows what that woman goes on to do next? But we know that in that one visit, there was conversion. And in Jack's one visit with me, there was conversion. There was hope. There was hope. After he left my side, though, the other thing he taught me was the power of asking a question. They didn't promote it specifically in the movie, but this is what Jack's question was nightly. It is a worthwhile one of asking. The question he asked was, what more can I do to make tomorrow better? And that's like a nice motto to ask at conference and then go back to your normal work and forget all about conference and meetings and events. But what if you actually asked it night after night? What more can I do to make tomorrow better than today? My marriage, in my singleness, with my addiction, to be spirit-led, to serve in our community, to put on meetings and events that matter, that are Christ-centered, that love people where they are, that believe, as the Acts of the Apostles once did, that we actually, through the Spirit, we can change the world. Not just like fill up space. Can we get 108 people? No. We can change the world now. What more can I do to be used for good? That was a question Jack Buck asked for his entire life. It led to a Hall of Fame career, as you saw in the film, a great voice and lots of trophies. But in Jack's case and in ours, it will lead to a Hall of Fame life too. The kind of life that not only allows you to collect trophies like Hall of Fame baseballs, but to audaciously give them away to 22-year-old, addicted, introverted, self-conscious, self-loathing nobodies. And in giving away the best of your story, you change their story too. That's the story of Jack Buck. Not a radio announcer, not a saint, but a guy who spent his life asking a question, what more can I do? And was actually bold enough to live and answer it. So I hope there's something in that story that you can play forward in your meetings, in your events, in your leadership, in your marriages, in your singleness, in your addiction, in your lives. So, by the way, I just want to call out Jay, and I know that Scott's going to rip my microphone away in a moment, but before he does, this happens because of Jane's audacity. It's why we're gathered. It's why I have the honor of speaking with you. It's why you have the breakout speakers and Scott and everyone else gathered. It's why you ate the pasta you ate today. So I want to credit my friend Jane for her work and her leadership, her faithfulness, her yes. And I want to credit each of you for being here. I thank you for representing your cities and your communities, your meetings and your events, and your King. You matter, and your best is yet to come. God bless you guys. Have a great time in Florida. Thank you.